The great chamber of the Galactic Council was brighter than a sun, glowing with cold light that never faded, never flickered. High above, golden rings of energy hummed, casting a pale blue radiance over the thousands of alien delegates who filled the tiered balconies. Each species had its own section, its own banners, its own colors, but all shared one expression tonight: expectation. Billions across the stars were watching. Every world connected to the council had tuned in. Entire cities had gone silent, their people staring at the grand transmission. In the middle of the chamber stood a single platform, smooth and white, raised above all others. Upon that platform stood the representatives of Earth. They did not bring guards. They did not bring fleets. No banners of nations waved behind them, no armies filled the skies above their planet. Just a small group of humans, dressed in dark uniforms, simple and unadorned. They stood still. Their faces calm. The whispers began to ripple across the chamber. Alien tongues clicked, hissed, and pulsed with confusion. "Why do they not kneel?" one voice whispered. "Do they not fear exile?" hissed another. "Are they so blind to their fate?" At the very top of the chamber, on the highest balcony, the council elders sat upon thrones carved from crystal and steel. Each elder was ancient, representing the oldest and strongest civilizations of the galaxy. Their words carried law. Their judgments shaped empires. And tonight, they would shape the fate of one young species. The lead elder, a creature with skin like polished obsidian and eyes glowing like twin suns, rose slowly. His voice echoed across the chamber, magnified by unseen power. "Humans of Earth, you stand accused of defiance. You refused tribute. You rejected our laws. You claim independence where none may exist. The council has deliberated, and the verdict is final." The voice thundered, shaking the chamber. The humans did not flinch. "You are cast out." A wave of murmurs spread like a storm. Some aliens gasped, others laughed cruelly. Whole factions leaned forward to watch the humans break. For in the long history of the council, exile was worse than death. Exile meant no protection, no trade, no rights. It meant being hunted, enslaved, or destroyed. No species had ever survived exile. The elder raised his voice again. "All rights stripped. All alliances severed. You are no longer recognized as part of the galactic order. From this day forth, Earth is nothing." The chamber shook with finality. Gongs of judgment rang out, vibrating through the air, carrying the sound of doom across every listening world. The aliens waited for the reaction. Would the humans cry out? Would they beg? Would they collapse to their knees and plead for mercy? But the humans did none of these things. Their leader, a tall woman with grey streaks in her hair, raised her chin slightly. Her eyes swept the chamber, not with fear, but with something colder. Something heavier. She gave no words, no protests. She only looked. And then, in silence, the humans turned. Their boots struck the platform with steady rhythm. Step after step, they walked toward the long corridor that would take them out of the chamber, out of the council's sight, out of the so-called galactic order. The silence was deafening. Aliens shifted uncomfortably. Many frowned, confused. Others sneered, convinced humans were too stunned to react. A few, however, shivered with unease. "Why do they not speak?" whispered one elder. "Why do they look so calm?" asked another. "Do they know something?" murmured a third. The humans disappeared into the shadows of the corridor, their footsteps fading until nothing remained. The vast chamber filled again with murmurs, louder this time, frantic. "They will fall within a cycle," one delegate declared. "They will beg to return before long," another insisted. "Exile means death," a third laughed. Yet not all agreed. In a dark corner of the chamber, a young alien ambassador leaned forward, his hands trembling. He had studied human history. He had seen the stubbornness in their wars, the fire in their survival. He whispered to no one in particular, his words drowned in the roar of the council. "They are not broken," he said. "They are waiting." Outside the chamber, the stars stretched endless and quiet. The human envoy moved through the docking bays without speaking to reporters, without answering the shouts of alien voices. They entered their shuttle, sealed the doors, and vanished into the void. But even as the council returned to its debates, even as billions of watchers believed humanity had been defeated, a strange tension lingered. Something about the way the humans had walked. The way their eyes had shone. The way silence had seemed louder than any protest. One elder, older than most, sat motionless long after the others had left. His voice was low, but the words chilled even his own heart. They should have begged. They should have raged. They should have cried. But they did not. Why? He looked toward the stars beyond the chamber walls, toward the small blue world now stripped of rights. They know something, he whispered to himself. Something the rest of us do not. And far away, beyond the sight of alien eyes, the humans returned home, not broken, not defeated, but silent as stone. Factories would stir. Old shipyards would awaken. Plans would begin. The council believed it had cast Earth into nothingness. But in truth, it had given humanity exactly what it needed. Freedom. And with that freedom, something greater than a fleet would rise. Something no council could ever control. Something that even now, in secret, had already begun. The council chamber dimmed, the judgment complete, but in the silence that followed, a single question remained in the minds of those who had truly watched. Why were the humans so calm? The answer would come, but not today. Not tomorrow. It would come when the stars themselves trembled beneath the shadow of what humanity was about to build. The exile was not an end. It was a beginning. The shuttle left the council's world in silence, its engines whispering against the endless dark. No words were exchanged inside. The human envoys sat quietly, watching the stars glide past the windows. None of them needed to speak. They all understood what had just happened. They had been exiled, humiliated before the eyes of billions, stripped of every protection. To the galaxy, Earth was finished. But Earth did not break that easily. When the shuttle reached home space, no banners of mourning were raised. No weeping filled the cities. The news spread across every nation, every settlement, every outpost, and yet the people of Earth did not despair. They worked. Factories rumbled awake, older than the council itself, vast forges from past wars reigniting with thunder. Shipyards long dormant began to glow again, skeletal frames of forgotten vessels slowly transforming into something new. Aliens watching from afar expected riots. They expected collapse, anger, chaos. They expected humanity to tear itself apart in despair. But none of this happened. Instead, across the surface of Earth and on its colonies, a silence settled. A silence of focus. Miners dug deeper into the asteroids, dragging out metals the council had long forbidden them to touch. Engineers labored day and night, drawing up designs that had been shelved for decades. The skies filled with the hum of transports, carrying parts to secret places where eyes could not see. In orbit above the moon, hidden stations came alive with activity. Lights flashed in forgotten corridors, machines stirred, and docks once empty began to swallow the shapes of enormous hulls. They were not small ships. They were not the delicate crafts the council used for patrol and ceremony. These were heavier, broader, darker. The aliens who spied on them sent hurried messages back to the council. The reports were fragmented, filled with confusion. The humans are not grieving, one report read. They are preparing. The council ignored it. To them, exile was death. No species had ever risen again after being cast out. They assumed humans were clinging to pride before their inevitable collapse. But in the shadows of Earth's night, things were different. Old generals met in underground chambers, spreading maps across tables. Scientists whispered over blueprints, their eyes burning with restless fire. Farmers offered their fields for hidden facilities. No one spoke of despair. They spoke only of building. Ships began to disappear from official records. Whole convoys slipped away from known trade routes, never to return. Some believed they had been destroyed by pirates, but in truth, they had gone elsewhere, into the belts of rock and ice, into the forgotten regions of space where the council's eyes could not reach. There, in secret, vast structures rose. It was not only ships that were being forged. Colonies were being transformed. Civilian outposts became fortress worlds. Mining stations became supply hubs. What had once been scattered and weak was now being drawn together into something greater. The silence of humanity was not weakness. It was patience. Across the stars, aliens whispered again. Why do they not speak? Why do they not protest? Traders noticed human ports closing, one after another. Scientists who had once shared their research withdrew, shutting down communications. Ambassadors disappeared from the grand halls of other species, leaving their embassies empty. Humanity was vanishing, folding inward, gathering itself like a storm. The council debated this in their endless meetings. Some laughed. They are afraid, one elder said. They hide because they are finished. Others frowned. They hide because they prepare. But no one acted. They believed humanity could never rise alone. One alien spy returned from the asteroid belts with trembling hands. His ship was scarred, his voice breaking. I saw it, he whispered to his masters. I saw the forge. The masters pressed him for details, but he gave only fragments. He had seen structures larger than cities, stretching across rocks and void. He had seen shapes, vast, armored, silent, drifting in the dark. He had barely escaped. The last image he carried showed only a silhouette, a curve of black metal so large it blotted out the stars behind it. His report was dismissed. Impossible, the council declared. Exiles cannot build such things. He saw shadows. Nothing more. But in the secret corners of space, the truth was different. Humanity was building. Humanity was waiting. And humanity was silent. The silence was more frightening than any words could have been. It was the silence of factories running without pause, the silence of fleets vanishing from sight, the silence of billions united in a single purpose. And as the months turned into years, the silence grew heavier, like the weight of thunder before a storm. Aliens continued to whisper. Why are they calm? Why do they not fight? Why do they only build? But no answer came. The answer would come later. It would come when the silence finally broke, and the storm humanity had been shaping would fall across the galaxy. For now, Earth remained quiet. Factories burned through the night. Ships left their ports without names, without records, without destinations. The forge continued its work in the dark, unseen, unstoppable. And somewhere, deep inside the hidden stations, a voice whispered the thought that none dared speak aloud. They did not exile us. They freed us. Far from the crowded lanes of council-approved trade, where the stars burned cold and silent, a strange glow began to flicker in the shadows of the asteroid belts. At first, it was thought to be mining fires, small colonies stripping rocks for ore. But as months passed, the light grew brighter. Entire clusters of asteroids seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, glowing and dimming with a rhythm too deliberate to be natural. Traders avoided the region. They whispered of ships that slipped past without sound, ships with no markings, no signals, no trace of allegiance. Some swore they had seen vessels vanish into the dark, swallowed by shadow itself. Others claimed whole colonies had disappeared, erased from maps without explanation. The council dismissed these stories. Superstition, they said. The humans are broken. They have no power left. But in secret, alien spies kept watching. They sent their probes into the asteroid fields, into the silent places where human convoys had last been seen. Few probes ever returned. Those that did carried only fragments. Blurred images of colossal shapes, jagged outlines half hidden in the glare of construction fires. A crane larger than a city, suspending a structure too vast to measure. Machinery tearing through rock with a speed beyond council designs. The whispers grew louder. They are building. Not ships. Something more. They call it the Forge. Deep within the asteroid fields, humanity had carved out a world of its own. Not a planet, not a colony, but a living machine. Hundreds of asteroids had been fused together, hollowed out, and laced with tunnels and reactors. Foundries burned day and night, consuming raw ore by the mountain. Forges screamed with molten fire, birthing metals harder than any known alloy. The humans had taken everything the council denied them, restricted minerals, forbidden engines, outlawed weapons, and turned them into something new. Massive hulls hung suspended in the void, larger than anything the council had ever dared to design. Some were simple warships, sleek and black, their surfaces bristling with hidden ports. Others were leviathans, their armor layered thick enough to withstand the fire of entire fleets. But there was one shape that dwarfed all others. It was not a ship, not in the way fleets were known. It was too vast, too heavy, Too dark. Its outline curved across the void like a black horizon, blotting out the stars behind it. Engineers called it a command ship. Workers whispered it was a world in itself. The forge had no anthem, no ceremony, no proclamation. It was only silence, the grinding of gears, the roar of fire, the hammer of machines. Humanity spoke not in words, but in creation. Still, rumors escaped. A smuggler who drifted too close spoke of a shadow moving through the stars, vast and silent, its hull absorbing the light. A pirate fleet attacked what they thought was a human mining station. None returned. Weeks later, one of their ships was found drifting empty, its hull scorched with marks that did not match any alien weapon. When that wreck was dragged into a council dockyard, the engineers who studied it went pale. The burns were precise, lines cut with unnatural accuracy, as though the metal had been sliced apart by something invisible. "This is not council design," one whispered. "This is human." The council silenced the report. They declared it fabrication, lies meant to stir fear. Yet unease spread. Delegates asked questions in private chambers. Generals demanded answers. Were the humans hiding something? In the dark halls of the forge, no such questions were asked. Everyone already knew the answer. They were not hiding. They were waiting. The forge was not simply a place. It was a promise. A promise that exile had not broken humanity, but remade it. Every hammer strike was a vow. Every finished hull was a message. Every silent launch into the void was a warning the council refused to hear. And somewhere in the shadows, beneath the roar of the forges, an old general walked the steel corridors and placed his hand against the black metal of the largest vessel. He did not smile. He did not speak. He only whispered the words all of humanity carried in silence. "They cast us out. We will return." The forge pulsed again, its fires burning brighter, its engines churning louder, as though the very stars themselves trembled at what was coming. In the dark stretches of the asteroid belts, far beyond the regulated lanes of the council, a strange light burned. At first it was faint, like the glow of mining fires. Traders thought little of it, assuming humans were scavenging what little they could after exile. But the light did not fade. It grew. It spread. Whole clusters of rock began to shine with activity, like embers hidden in the night. Convoys of human ships moved in and out, always silent, never marked, their transponders dark. They carried no signals of trade, no symbols of allegiance. They vanished into the belts and did not return. More and more, alien merchants reported seeing them, black silhouettes against the stars, silent as shadows. Some alien captains went missing. Their ships never reached their destinations. Others returned shaken, swearing they had seen something vast moving among the rocks. Most were laughed at. The council dismissed their stories as rumor, fear, or lies. "Exiles cannot build," the elders said. "Humans are finished." But deep in the belts, where no council eyes could reach, the truth was far different. The forge had awakened. It was not one station, but many, hundreds of asteroids fused with steel, hollowed into labyrinths of tunnels, packed with forges that roared day and night. Fire burned in the dark. Mountains of or were melted into rivers of molten light. Machines the size of cities chewed through stone, spitting out armor plates thicker than any council warship carried. Ships took shape in silence. Warships longer than towers rose from the docks, their black hulls reflecting no light, their surfaces sharp and cold. Others were even greater, leviathans that seemed less like vessels and more like moving fortresses. But one shape stood above them all. It was not just large. It was monstrous. Its frame stretched so wide it blocked whole fields of stars. Workers whispered that it was more than a ship, that it was a world in itself. They gave it no name, only a single word, the flagship. The forge did not sing. It did not boast. It only worked, each strike of the hammer, each spark of the welder, each hum of the engines adding to a silence more powerful than any words. Yet some shadows of truth slipped out. A smuggler told of drifting too close and seeing towers of steel rising from an asteroid like the bones of a titan. He swore he saw a hull so massive it seemed endless, stretching into the dark. A pirate fleet attacked what they believed was a human mining station. None survived. Months later, a single wreck drifted back into known space, its hull marked with strange, clean scars. The council's engineers studied the remains. They said the cuts were too perfect, too sharp, as if the ship had been sliced apart by invisible blades. The report was sealed. Those who had seen it whispered one word only: human. In the council chamber, the elders waved away the rumors. They are exiles, they said. They cling to scraps. They will die in silence. But inside the hidden halls of the forge, there was no talk of death. There was only building. Engineers whispered over blueprints with tired eyes but steady hands. Miners hauled endless ore. Soldiers trained in sealed domes, their weapons sharper and stronger than anything allowed by council law. And through it all, the forge pulsed, like a heart beating in the dark. One night, as the fires burned hot and the engines roared louder than storms, an old general walked through the steel corridors. He stopped before the vast frame of the flagship, its hull still unfinished but already larger than any vessel in known space. He reached out and pressed his hand to the black metal, cold as the void. His voice was quiet, but the words carried weight. They thought exile would end us. But exile has given us freedom. The forge answered with silence, and in that silence was a promise. The council believed humanity had been cast aside. They did not yet understand. They had unleashed something far greater than a fleet. They had unleashed an empire in the making. In the cold stretches of the asteroid fields, far from the council's approved lanes of travel, something vast and hidden began to grow. At first, the signs were small. A faint glow here, a convoy of freighters vanishing there. Traders whispered of odd patterns in the stars, as though new shadows were forming where none had been before. The council dismissed these tales as superstition, but the whispers would not stop. The truth was simple: humanity had disappeared from the open stage of the galaxy, but it had not gone silent. It had gone underground, deeper than anyone could see. And in that darkness, they were building. The forge was born not from one station, but from hundreds. Asteroids were hollowed out, fused with steel, and turned into living machines. Mines that once pulled scraps of ore for the council now thundered without pause, tearing mountains into rivers of molten fire. Great machines, taller than towers, chewed through rock and spat out sheets of armored plating. The silence of exile had been transformed into the roar of creation. It was not just ships they built, it was symbols. Warships long and sharp, black hulls drinking the starlight. Cruisers layered with armor so thick that nothing the council possessed could pierce them. But even these were small compared to the largest frame rising in the void. It stretched across the black like a horizon of steel, a skeleton of titanic scale. Workers spoke of it in hushed voices, calling it the heart of the fleet, the vessel that would lead all others. And yet, for all its size, the forge made no announcements. No threats, no declarations. Only silence. Still, silence does not hide everything. A lone smuggler stumbled too close one cycle, guided by greed and curiosity. What he saw nearly broke his mind. He spoke of entire asteroids glowing with fire, of cranes larger than cities lowering armor plates into place, of shadows so massive they swallowed the stars behind them. He escaped, but his words carried terror. Few believed him. The council mocked the tale. But deep inside, some began to wonder. The first proof came not from smugglers, but from wreckage. A pirate band vanished near human space, their fleet gone without a signal. Months later, a single ship was found adrift. Its hull was carved with lines too clean, too precise, scars that looked less like battle and more like surgery. Engineers studied it in secret, their voices shaking. "This is not alien fire," one said. "This is human." The council tried to bury the truth, but rumors grew. Delegates whispered in shadowed chambers. Generals muttered of hidden fleets. Still, the elders laughed. They are exiles. They are nothing. But in the hidden halls of the forge, the truth was alive. Humanity had shed the chains of council law. Forbidden engines roared to life. Outlawed weapons gleamed in secret vaults. Designs once crushed by alien decree were spread across vast tables, turned real by countless hands. Inside those endless workshops, workers labored without complaint. They remembered the day Earth was cast out. They remembered the silence of their leaders as they walked from the council chamber. That silence lived inside every strike of the hammer, every flash of welding light, every rivet driven into steel. The forge was more than a factory. It was a vow. In one of the deepest chambers, where the fire glowed brightest, an old commander walked alone. He moved past endless scaffolds, past rows of cannons waiting to be mounted, past engines the size of towers. At last, he came to the shadow of the great ship rising above them all. Its hull was unfinished, but already it felt alive, vast and cold. He rested his hand against the black surface. "They thought exile would end us," he whispered. "But exile freed us." The ship gave no reply, yet the silence seemed to answer him all the same. It was the silence of patience. The silence of a storm waiting to break. The council thought humanity had vanished. In truth, they had only stepped into the shadows. From those shadows, something was rising, not just a fleet, but the beginning of an empire. And the forge burned on, its fire painting the void in colors no alien eye had ever seen before. Strange reports began to reach the council, carried by frightened voices and broken signals. Traders vanished near the borders of human space. Whole convoys disappeared into silence, their escorts never seen again. At first, it was easy to blame pirates, easy to dismiss the danger. But the stories kept returning, and they all carried the same chilling note: black ships. They were not like council vessels, which flashed their colors and boasted of their power. These ships moved without signal, without warning, without sound. They appeared in the dark, swift and sharp, their hulls drinking in the starlight. Witnesses said they struck with precision and vanished like ghosts. Whispers spread across the markets and the great halls alike. Humans, some muttered. "It is them." But the council laughed. "Exiles cannot build fleets," they said. "These are shadows. Nothing more." Yet shadows have weight. One council patrol ventured close to the edge of Earth's claimed space. Their cruisers were seasoned, their crews confident. They did not expect resistance. They believed the humans broken and scattered. But in the silence of deep space, something stirred. A shape emerged, dark as the void itself. The patrol barely had time to raise shields before their systems flickered and died. One by one, their ships went dark, their engines silent, their hulls split open by weapons they did not recognize. No distress signal reached the council. Only fragments drifted back, broken transmissions filled with static and terror. "They are here, everywhere," shadows, then nothing. Inside the chamber of the elders, tension grew. Delegates demanded answers. Some whispered that the humans had returned to strike at their neighbors. Others claimed it was impossible. "They are exiles," they insisted. "They should be weak." But weakness was not what the galaxy saw. More and more, silent fleets were reported. Small colonies under alien rule found themselves suddenly protected by black warships that bore no name, no flag, only silence. Pirate bases that had plagued trade for centuries were found reduced to wreckage, their leaders gone without trace. And still the humans did not speak. They sent no declarations, no messages of intent. They only acted. They struck swiftly, then disappeared into the dark, leaving only wreckage behind. The silence was louder than words. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, fear spread. "Why do they not speak?" one alien asked. "Why do they hide in the shadows?" But the truth was clear to those who had studied humanity's history. Silence was not fear. It was preparation. And in the deepest chambers of the council, one elder finally voiced what others dared not. "They are no longer exiles," he said. "They are something else now. Something larger." He looked toward the stars, his voice falling to a whisper. "An empire is waking." The first signs came quietly. A trader's vessel vanished on the fringe of human space, its signal cut mid-transmission. Then a mining convoy never arrived at its destination. Pirates were blamed, as they always were. But soon the stories changed. Survivors spoke of shapes in the dark, vast, silent ships with no markings, no signal codes, no council registration. Their hulls were black as night, their weapons swift and merciless. At first, the council scoffed. "Exiles cannot build fleets," the elders said. "They are scattered, leaderless, weak." Yet the whispers grew louder. Entire sectors reported sudden strikes against pirate bases, strikes so precise they left no survivors. Warlords who had tormented trade routes for centuries were found erased, their fortresses shattered, their fleets reduced to drifting wrecks. And still, No message came from Earth. No claim of victory, no demands, no declaration. Only silence. A council patrol was the first to test the truth. 3 cruisers, sleek and well-armed, entered the belt near human territory. They expected nothing but scattered miners and frightened settlers. Instead, they met shadows. Black vessels slid from the dark, weapons glowing only for a moment before the cruisers' shields collapsed. Engines died without warning, systems went blind, hulls tore open under invisible fire. The patrol had no time to fight. No time to send warning. Only fragments of static returned, voices choked with terror. They are here, everywhere, then silence. The council hushed the news, but rumors spread faster than their decrees. Traders whispered in markets. Ambassadors spoke behind closed doors. The humans have returned, they said. Not as beggars. Not as broken exiles. As something else. Still, the council mocked. Stories. Nothing more. But fear crept into their voices now. Fear they could not banish. For the black ships did not only destroy. Sometimes they appeared without firing a shot. A colony on the edge of space, long oppressed by raiders, woke one night to find black warships in orbit. The pirates never came again. The colony was left alone. Protected, but never spoken to. The silence was worse than threats. Each strike, each disappearance, each shadow grew into a legend. Some aliens swore the ships were unmanned, guided by ghosts. Others whispered they were alive, monsters of steel born from exile. None could prove the truth. All they knew was that wherever the humans passed, order followed. Ruthless, unspoken, undeniable order. And still Earth itself said nothing. No envoy returned. No message was sent. Humanity built in silence, struck in silence, and vanished again into silence. In the council chamber, arguments raged. They are rebuilding, one voice said. They will rise against us. They are exiles, another snapped. They cannot. But an elder who had lived longer than most shook his head. His voice was heavy with dread. They do not speak because they do not need to. They are no longer asking. They are taking. And when they finish, they will not return as outcasts. He looked to the stars, his eyes narrowing. They will return as rulers. The council could no longer ignore it. Reports poured in faster than they could be silenced. Entire fleets went missing. Outposts once loyal to the council now flew no banners at all, yet somehow remained untouched. Colonies whispered of black warships hovering in orbit, silent guardians who appeared only when danger threatened. No tribute was demanded, no allegiance sworn, yet protection was given all the same. The pattern was clear to anyone who dared to look. Humanity was not only building ships, they were building influence. An invisible hand was spreading across the stars, not through speeches or treaties, but through action and fear. One delegate slammed his hand on the council's table. They were cast out. They should have fallen into ruin. How can exiles command such power? Another replied, his voice trembling, perhaps exile freed them. Perhaps without us, they have become something else. The chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate war, a crushing strike to end this human threat before it grew further. Others urged caution, pointing out that no one knew the true size of this silent fleet. Every destroyed armada, every erased pirate band, every vanished patrol hinted at a power far beyond the council's reach. Still, the humans remained silent. When one envoy was finally sent toward Earth, his ship returned broken, drifting on emergency power. The crew was alive, but shaken into silence. They refused to speak of what they saw. The only record pulled from the ship's databanks was a short burst of sensor readings, rows upon rows of massive shipyards orbiting Earth and Mars, construction stretching like a web across the void, hundreds of warships at every stage of completion. And beyond them, larger frames, titanic in scale, ships that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. The data was quickly locked away. Only the highest members of the Council were allowed to see it. When they did, silence filled the chamber. No words, no arguments, no laughter remained. One elder broke the silence at last. His voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. They were exiled to the dark. And in the dark, they found strength. If this continues, The galaxy will not speak of the Council's rule. It will speak of humanity's empire. The words hung in the air like a verdict. And across the stars, far from the chamber's light, the Black Fleet continued to grow. The decision was made in secret. A coalition of Council fleets would march into human space and put an end to the Whispers. No warnings, no negotiations. The Council wanted proof of strength, proof that exile still meant weakness. Hundreds of ships gathered, drawn from every major species. It was the largest force assembled since the great wars of the past, a fleet meant to terrify and overwhelm. Admirals spoke with certainty. The humans will scatter, they said. They will surrender their stolen ships. They cannot stand against us. The armada advanced, engines blazing, weapons charged. Their banners shone like beacons across the void. But as they crossed into the shadow of Earth's claimed space, the light seemed to die. The stars themselves dimmed. The first human ships appeared without warning. They did not decloak, they did not signal, they did not speak. They were simply there, black hulls gliding from the darkness, their weapons hidden, their presence heavy. The Council fleet outnumbered them 5-1. Yet unease spread among the alien crews. The humans made no threats, no demands. They simply held position, silent and unyielding. At last, the Council Admiral gave the order. Weapons fired, energy beams lit the void, missiles streaked across space. For a heartbeat, it seemed the humans would be crushed under sheer numbers. Then the shadows moved. The Black Fleet shifted with precision, every vessel turning as one. Their counterstrike came in silence, no roars, no flashes of pride, only deadly accuracy. Council shields collapsed in seconds. Ships spun out of formation, systems crippled by weapons they did not understand. Entire cruisers went dark without a single hull breach, their power stolen, their crews trapped. The battle was not loud. It was terrifyingly quiet. In less than an hour, half the Council fleet was drifting wreckage. The rest broke, scattering into hyperspace, their admirals shouting frantic orders that no one obeyed. Not once did the humans pursue. They allowed survivors to flee. No message was broadcast, no boast of victory. Only silence. When the broken remnants of the Council armada limped home, the chamber was filled with dread. The silence of the humans had spoken louder than any threat. They had not just defended their exile, they had proven dominance. And across the galaxy, species who had long lived under Council rule began to whisper a dangerous thought. Perhaps the age of the Council is ending. Perhaps the humans will bring something new. The defeat of the Council fleet could not be hidden. Too many ships had been lost, too many survivors had returned with haunted eyes. Stories spread faster than decrees, whispers of black ships moving like shadows, weapons that crippled entire armadas, battles won without words. In the outer colonies, fear shifted into hope. Worlds long abandoned by the Council began to see new visitors, silent human envoys escorted by black warships. They did not demand tribute. They did not demand loyalty. They only offered one promise. You will be safe. Some colonies hesitated, fearful of trading one ruler for another. But when raiders came, they found themselves annihilated in moments by the silent fleet. Survivors from those colonies began to speak with awe. The humans do not rule us, they said. They shield us. One by one, smaller civilizations began to drift from the Council's reach, their banners quietly lowered, their ships quietly aligning with the shadows. They did not declare rebellion. They simply stopped listening. Inside the Council chamber, the silence grew heavier each day. Delegates shouted about treachery, betrayal, vengeance. But the fear was plain in their eyes. Every attempt to rebuild their fleets ended the same way: convoys ambushed, weapons stolen, shipyards destroyed in the night. Humanity never claimed responsibility. But the shadows always followed. A turning point came when a mid-level species, once loyal to the Council, declared openly, "We no longer recognize the Council's rule. If protection is to be given, we choose humanity." The announcement shook the stars. Never before had a species spoken such words. Never before had the Council been so openly defied. But what terrified the chamber most was what came after. The humans did not reply. They did not appear in force. They simply allowed the declaration to stand. No punishment, no war. Only silence. That silence was more dangerous than 1,000 fleets. It meant confidence. It meant patience. It meant humanity was no longer rushing to prove itself. It was waiting, knowing the galaxy would come to them. And it was working. In shadowed halls, in secret meetings, leaders of smaller races whispered the same question: if the Council cannot protect us, why should we kneel to them? Why not turn to the humans instead? The Council's greatest fear was becoming real. Exiles were no longer exiles. They were becoming a center of power, not through force alone, but through choice. And somewhere deep in the stars, a new empire was forming, one that did not ask for recognition. One that did not need to. The moment came without warning. For years, humanity had built in silence, struck in silence, and watched in silence. Their black fleets haunted the stars, their influence spread without words, their empire grew without declaration. The galaxy had begun to wonder if they would ever speak again. Then the Council summoned one last gathering. Billions of eyes turned to the chamber, desperate to see a show of strength. The Council leaders stood tall, their voices sharp with false confidence. Humanity is a threat, they declared. They bring chaos. They must be contained. But even as they spoke, the chamber's light shifted. Shadows stretched across the floor. The great windows that overlooked the stars grew dark, as though night itself had swallowed them. And then, ships. Hundreds. Thousands. The Black Fleet filled the void outside, so vast it blotted out entire constellations. The council chamber fell silent. From the center platform, a single human stepped forward. Calm. Unarmed. Alone. His voice was steady, simple, and clear. You exiled us. You stripped us of rights, of voice, of place. We asked for nothing but survival. And in exile, we found strength. The chamber trembled as the fleets outside moved in perfect formation, silent and precise, their sheer presence a verdict of power. We no longer seek your approval. We no longer need your counsel. We are not outcasts. We are not broken. We are not yours to command. For a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the words fell like thunder. We are the empire of humanity, and from this day, we rise on our own terms. The council sat frozen, their voices stolen, their pride shattered. Billions across the stars watched in silence, their hearts racing with fear or hope. Some saw conquerors. Others saw protectors. But all saw the truth. The age of exile was over. The age of humanity had begun.